Hey there, my friend. Welcome to another Salescast screencast. Now, in this screencast, we're going to be looking at how to change the port that sales runs on. So you know that when you run sales L or sales lifts by default, sales serves your application on the port 1337. Well, it turns out that the port 1337 is not the default port that sales expect, but it's more of a fallback port that sales uses when you do not specify a port for your sales application to run on. So how do we set these ports? There are a couple of ways, and each have their own advantages and their own use cases. And I'm going to show you how you could do this in all the different ways that sales makes available for you. So now, when you run your application, sales is going to look for the ports in a port setting in your config file. So let's see how we could set that port setting. Okay, so I'm going to kill the server first. Then we're going to open this application in code. So this is the blog application that we built in the Getting Started with Sales course. And I'm just going to open it up. And let's see how to set the ports. So the first place you could set the port is by making use of local.js. Now, you know local.js is the file where you set configs that you as a developer is going to be using and it's local to you. So if we open up this file, you could see it's empty right now. Now, if I add port, let's say port 3000, a very familiar port for front-end developers, and I go back to the terminal and I run sales lift again, you could see that sales now runs on port 3000. Okay, so I like this method because it allows me to specify the ports for myself. So every other member of my team can specify their own port if it's a large project that has a lot of developers on the team. So that is one way. Another way is that sales gives you this file to go back to Visual Studio Code. Now in your config file, if you want to set a global top level setting, like the port is a global top level setting. Okay, so I'm just going to remove this. So if we want to set, like, everybody on the team can use the port that we're going to set, and it's like de facto port, we could create a new file if it's not there already. So when you make a brand new sales project, this file won't be available, but you could create it, and the file name is misc.js, which stands for miscellaneous. So every top level settings goes in here. So what it will take, it will be the module.exports. Then you just give it an object. Then you specify the port. Let's give it 8080 for this case. Save that up. Go back to item and run sales lift. And fair enough, we are running on port 8080. Okay. All right. So those are the ways you could specify the sales port when you want to specify it per project or per team. All right. So another way you could specify the sales port to run on is by passing it as an environment variable when you run the sales lift command. So you could do sales L, you pass in -- port, then you pass in the port you want. Let's call this 9000. Let's give it the 9000 port. So when we run that, we get to see sales is running on port 9000. Okay. And lastly, I want to mention this though. So if we go back to Visual Studio Code and go back to env, you could see there is production here, right? So this is sales environment configuration where you could configure staging, production, development if you want. So let's see if I have development.js here and I give it module.exports and I port, what haven't we used yet? So let's see, 8000. Yes. Okay, 8000. Go back to item and we run sales L. And fair enough, our application is running on port 8000. Now, personally, I don't use the development environment because I like to think that every other setting that I do in my config file, in my local.js, they take the place of the development.js folder. But you could use that because sales make that available. So if you want to run on a particular port in development, you could have the development.js. But personally, I think that the best places to set these global ports, if you want to set it globally for your team, should be in the mix.js, or you set it local in your local.js file if you just want to use it for yourself. But if you want to do a one-time thing, you could just pass it as a port like so. All right, so there you go. Those are the ways to change the default port or to set the default port that your sales application will run on. Remember, port 1337 is the port that sales will fall back to when it doesn't find the values in local.js or in your environment or in the mix.js file. It will use the port 1337.